everyone, my name is Meg Treseder. I am the Adult Services Librarian here at the beautiful Azle Memorial Library, and I am excited to share some of the newest releases that we have in our library. I've got 4 fiction picks and then 1 memoir. I loved some and I didn't love others, so I'm sharing all of them with you today. I'm doing the same rating system as last time, so 0 to 5. 5, I loved it, and 0, I wish I hadn't read it. So, the first one is called Outlined by Rachel Cusk. And this one I gave a solid 3. The writing is fabulous. She is a gifted and talented writer. It's very insightful. She is able to portray things in ways that you recognize, as a fellow human being. Oh, I felt that way before, or I have experienced that before, and I love that. She captures things really well. It was the premise that I didn't really buy. So it's about a woman who teaches writing classes, and she's on her way, I think it's to Greece, to teach a class. And she meets a man on the plane, and they strike up this conversation, they become friends, and they meet up on the island when she's there and she has some free time. But you never get a sense of who this woman is. She really does remain this outline of a character, and that drove me crazy. You don't hear her voice. She has no inner dialogue, and when she's talking to somebody else, it's them talking the whole time, and that drove me crazy. I also think people unburden themselves to her, and I just don't know if that's realistic. Even in our generation of TMI all the time, I really didn't feel like this is how people talk. They aren't always saying these very intimate, insightful things. So I would read her again, because I think she's a very good writer, but I just didn't love this one. So the next one is Finding Jake by Brian Reardon. And I also didn't love this one. I gave this a 2. The premise is a good one. It's about a school shooting. A father, he's a stay-at-home dad, and he gets a text saying there's been a shooting at your kid's school. Please come. And so he has to go and find out the fate of his 2 children. And I liked the part of the book that talked about how it must be to be a stay-at-home father in today's society. He talks about going on play dates where all of the other parents there are women, and they want to talk about female things, and they can't with him in the room. I thought that probably was quite accurate about what a man must experience, and that was interesting to me. I just could not stand him as a character, and he is the book. So if you don't like him, it's probably, I think, hard to like the book. And this was much higher rated on Goodreads than I think it should have been, in my humble opinion. He was very whiny and wishy-washy and needy. I also didn't love his wife, and for some reason he revered her, and that was never clear why. It was cliched writing and also poorly edited, and that just destroys a book's credibility for me. So, didn't love it, don't recommend it. All right, the next one I really did enjoy. It's called The Life We Bury by Alan Eskins. And this is a great whodunit. It's probably a little bit less believable, but it's okay. I still loved it. It's about a young man who is in a college class, and for one of his assignments, he has to write a biography. And he chooses to write about this man he meets at a nursing home. And this man is there because he's dying of cancer, but he also happens to be a convicted murderer who's going to spend the rest of his days, this very painful cancer, at this nursing home. But he's been convicted for these terrible crimes. And so he agrees to write his story, but he also agrees to investigate because there have been some discrepancies with the evidence and the testimony during his trial. And this character, it was so refreshing after Finding Jake. He was assertive and got things done, and he was ingenious and got himself out of scrapes that you just, what is he going to do next? How will he get out of this one? And he was take charge, and it was great and very clever. And I found myself just wanting to keep picking it up to see, how it ended. I loved it and highly recommend it. The next one is Epitaph by Mary Russell. And I have some stickies in here because I want to read some excerpts to you, at least one. I loved this book. I had just waded through 900 pages of Lonesome Dove, which is one of the most flawless books, I think, and loved it. I wanted more good writing on the West. But I want to hurry and quickly read to you part of the foreword, just because to me it illustrated what a good writer she is. Okay, and this is just to give some background. This is about Wyatt Earp and the other Earp brothers, and Doc Holliday and the gunfight at OK Corral, which I didn't know much about, and so this was fascinating to me. And she starts it this way. To understand the gunfight in Tombstone, stop now and watch a clock for 30 seconds. Listen to it tick while you try to imagine 1/2 of a single minute so terrible it will pursue you all your life and far beyond the grave. Begin your half minute with righteous confidence, though you stand 6 paces from armed and angry men. They have abused you. They have threatened your life. Your rage and fear are justified. They are in the wrong. You are within the law. About all this, have no doubt. 2 quiet clicks, a breathless instant. The gunfire becomes deafening. When a sudden silence falls, just 30 seconds later, the life you thought was yours will be over. A century will pass and decades more. Still, the living will haunt the dead as that half minute becomes entertainment for hundreds of millions around the world. Long after you die, you will be judged by those who cannot imagine standing 6 paces from armed and angry men, not even for 30 seconds. So I had to pick it up after reading that and loved it. She has characters that come alive, I think, and I'm not an expert on the Earps, and I think there's some controversy about were they villains or heroes, and I think probably a little bit of both some days in that, in the circumstances they were in. She portrays the West, I think, pretty accurately as this very lawless, violent, brutal place. And I think she talks a lot about the struggle of good men who have to perhaps take extreme actions in these kinds of circumstances. So she's, I would say, much more sympathetic to the Earps, but I think she still accurately portrays their flaws. The writing just sings. She's able to portray things really well in ways that just keep you wanting to keep reading. It's very engrossing. I will warn you, and she warns the reader, it's very interesting. She says, this is probably 20 to 30 pages before the end of the book. She says, if you want a storybook ending, stop the book now. And I kind of wish I had, because the last 20 or 30 pages are about the Earps and they're having to live in this world that is, the West is won, it's conquered, and they have to make do with what's left in their reputations that have been destroyed in some ways. And so it's a little bit harder to read, but this is a book I think that's very much worth reading, and I'm so glad that I did. The last book is Girl in the Dark by Anna Lindsay. And this is the memoir that I was talking about. And I will be very frank and say it is, like the cover says, it is a dark, bleak book. It's a sad one. It talks about a woman who, her life is such now that she cannot stand being around any kind of light. So she will spend most of her days, all day, basically in a blacked out room. She's put special film over the windows, and she has blackout curtains, and she has to wear actually special clothes that keep out the light. So it started with her working, she's kind of a policy wonk. She works for the government for a while, and this is in London, so she'll use phrases that, you know, it's not, they're British, which is kind of fun. And she's in front of the computer, and her face starts to burn. She says it feels like a blowtorch is being directed on it. And she realizes it's the light coming from the computer. And then, over the next few months, she realizes that she cannot stand any other kind of light, that her skin will just burn. And it burns for, she can be exposed for 10 seconds, and it will burn for days after. So it finally evolves to this place where she is in this dark room. And because you can't see to read, you can't watch television, you can't be on the internet or computer, obviously. So she listens to talking books. It's what she calls them because she's British. She listens to talking books all day long. And she shows her outrage and her hurt and her doubt and her suicidal thoughts. I mean, all of this is laid bare for the reader. So I'm very appreciative and in awe of her courage and her honesty. She talks about how she has a friend, her mother comes to visit her, and mentions this friend of the family who has depression and doesn't want to leave the house, you know, can't really get the energy to leave and go outside. And she says, well, can she at least look out a window? Because if she can, I don't feel too bad for her. And so she's very human in her reactions. I mean, I think that's how we all would be. You'd want to find meaning in your suffering and some relief, but she really doesn't for months on end. And then there's a kind of a glimmer of hope. She has to come downstairs. I think she gets an apple or a cup of tea or something, and she's able to endure the light that comes through the windows. And she's able to, at like dusk, to go out for a few hours at night. And she's such a good writer that I gave this book a 4 because I loved it so much. But she describes things in such beautiful ways. She describes the sunset at some point, and I had never heard it described that way. And it was just, it's fresh and new. And I think it's because when you can't experience a sunset for months or even years, and when you do, I think you see it in this very new, vivid way. And so she captures that in her writing, and I just loved it. Again, is it an uplifting, happy book? Probably not. The ending, and I guess this will be a spoiler, but I think you probably know that from the beginning of the book, is that there's no cure for it, and she will have to probably live with this the rest of her life. I mean, who knows? It could get better, but so it's a dark book, but you know, she has to live this life, and I think the least we can do is read about it. So I hope you enjoy some of these as much as I did, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.